From Wickham to Whitley Bay, Stonygate to Shields, Doggy to Darlow Backlane. Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
Right across the North East, the Red, the Toon and the Cat.
Do we really have to do this? I mean, fellas, really, do we have to do this? Can we just not have one off?
What a weekend.
I was just waiting for.
Weekend.
I was just. Oh, there he is. I was just waiting. I was just waiting for Macca to chirp in there. Go on, son. Gloat. Go on, gloat.
Go on. You can start us off because I'm happy not talking about football. I just want to hear from someone that's happy in this world. So you go.
Five goals, 4 different goal scorers, a clean sheet. Oh, what else can you say? Sunderland win, Newcastle and Middlesbrough lose. If Carlsberg done weekend.
Yeah, there's plenty to be said. Like, you know, what can you plant in your garden as you approach autumn in the UK and springtime in Australia? So, should we turn this into the horticultural show, guys?
I would love to. I would love to.
I'm digging that, Dave. I'm digging that.
We're going to create merch. Steve and Rye's own garden shears. We'll start selling them.
Oh.
There's going to be plenty sour grapes, I think, this morning.
Oh no, no! It's like a bad hangover, and we haven't had the alcohol.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. And I've completely made a buffoon of myself on the Legends, because I was on the Legends on Friday with the boys, and I went, yeah, Newcastle are going to win because they'll get a lift from the Champions League draw. Boro's going to win because they're going to win, and I can't see where the goal's going to come from for Sunderland.
That's a clean sweep. That's a hat trick. It is. That's well done.
And it didn't even take 53 seconds.
No, I said 4-0 to the Borough. How do you think I'm feeling? My goodness me. 4-0 to the Borough. That's how confident I was.
I took a draw at Brighton. I noticed Macca's backup plan as well. Now I see why he supports 2 teams, because if one loses,
exactly.
But when he has weekends like this, both teams winning. Dear me, ow.
What do you do when they both win, though, Steve? That's the thing.
Well, this is it. Fair play to you, Macca. You know, take me hat off to you. You've had a great weekend, and I think the worst thing about this this defeat for Newcastle this weekend is now we've got to wait. You know, not 1 week but 2 weeks.
That's the pain,
to put it right.
Yeah, that's the pain. And look, I did watch the Newcastle game, and I must say, look, it is a rough start. Obviously, Newcastle now losing 3 on the bounce, but Evan Ferguson at 18 years old.
Yeah.
What a find. So he looks the right talent, doesn't he? He might, I don't know, he seems to be going from strength to strength. And scoring the hat trick obviously against Newcastle, as much as Steve is going to hate me for it. It's, you know, I tell you what the Republic of Ireland have got a young star on their books there, because Evan Ferguson looks like a real talent.
The only positives I can take out of Newcastle's game was that, you know, Callum Wilson scored. It was a great finish.
It was a good finish.
Certainly putting himself back in contention for, you know, maybe his starting place in 2 weeks' time. Newcastle still created chances. I mean, you know, we really on another day would have probably had goals from, you know, Anthony Gordon, Alexander Isak and Miguel Almiron. So it wasn't as if Newcastle weren't creating chances. And the goals, I mean, Ferguson, credit to him, 18-year-old, he got the match ball, he'd be over the moon. Yep. But in the grand scheme of things, the team at the back just you know, Nick Pope probably a blame for at least 1 goal, if not 2. Yep. Laziness on behalf of the new signing Tonali, not to stand and come forward to try and clear his lines, and then just watching the ball go past him and past Nick Pope. So, you know, and the other one was a wicked deflection, which you know, completed Ferguson's hat trick. So for me, you know, this is what North East football fans do. You try to grab, you know, some kind of positive out of the huge negative. But for me, you know, it's much. You know, if it was a school report, it would read could do better. And you know, if Brighton was big, then in 2 weeks' time, Brentford at home is massive. And of course, we now enter that period of, you know, of fixture chaos at Newcastle. That's the problem, and I think it also shows, we were talking about the transfer window. You were saying, right, Steve, are you sure you don't need more players?
Yeah.
I think we've always said we needed, I think most of us felt we always needed another centre-half. And I think, the fact that Botman was injured, missing for that game, it just shows the frailties that we've got as centre-half. So, all round, a disappointing one for us, but a disappointing one for Boro as well, right?
Well,
thanks. Thanks for throwing over to that. That was great. Yeah. Love that. That was awesome.
I love the way Steve's got crisis mode on, because they haven't won in 3. The Boro haven't won in 10. I mean, that's the Boro's current run.
Isn't it?
They haven't
incredible, isn't it?
They don't have a victory in 10 league games.
Yeah, it's starting to look a little bit scary for the Boro, and obviously we've got the back end of last season where we just seemed to drop off, and then obviously into the playoffs where we lost to Coventry in both of them, and now we're starting off the new season exactly where we left off. And not only that, but we've taken 40 odd goals out of our team as well, and we're just not getting them anywhere. I mean, it really is unfortunately scary for us at the moment. We're dead last in the championship. We go into the international break. We have all the confidence in the world in Michael Carrick last season, looking like he was going to be the manager of the future, and he was going to, take us to the biggest and best place in the world in the Prem, and it's all just gone completely backwards, if I might add. The thing for me that I just keep relying back on is that last season, although we were playing so very well, we had so many goals in our team. We were winning 3-1, 4-2, 5-1s, all this, right? But we were still leaking goals, right? So if you have a look back when we were on that amazing run, there was always an opposition score. There was always a goal that went in. So we were always frail at the back. Take that into the new season, take the 40-odd goals out of the Middlesbrough squad. We're still frail at the back, and we got no goal scorers because, how can you replace a 29-goal scorer in Chuba Akpom? So it really is, at the moment, I guess for me, the international breaks come at a perfect time because Michael Carrick needs to go away and work out how to get that squad gelling, how to fix up our defensive frailties, because at the back, at the moment, I swear, I could score on them, and that's not saying much. So it's just all over the place, and the communication, and I like what you touched on there, Steve, with Tonali. Like it's the same for us in house, and our captain and Hackney, who are our defensive midfielders, literally not closing down the man. Like we had, I don't know if anyone saw it, but the Dozell goal from QPR was an absolute stunner. Don't get me wrong, but no one pressured him, no one ran at him. You know what I mean? He had all the time in the world to shoot from that far out, and obviously when you do, and you're a quality player, it's going to go in some of the time. So. Yeah, and then I'm getting, everyone's, you get the social media and that blows up, and Michael Carrick out, and it's just a sad place at the moment to be a Middlesbrough fan because you just don't know where to turn. And unfortunately, Sammy Silveira hasn't had the best start to life as well. The Aussie, he's got all the flair, but he hasn't had the finishing boots on, and we've not seen McGree start a game in a few games now as well, and there's questions around that. And yeah, it's not a happy place, and that's it. That's all I want to say. Well, I'll be back for Daffodil Hour in the next minute. On to you, Macca, for Sunderland.
I was just going to ask before touching on Sunderland. Do you think Michael Carrick is under pressure now?
Oh, massively. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I think he does. It just naturally comes when you're last on the table. Steve Gibson, is a manager that craves success. Sorry, is a owner that craves success. And look, I think he will give Carrick all the time in the world. Steve Gibson's always been notorious for giving managers the time they need to get it right. But Michael Carrick has now had a full transfer window, a full pre-season training. And like Dave said, we got to look at it as like obviously it's only 4 games this season, but it's also the games at the back end of last season. Not being able to secure promotion and stuff like that, and you start to look at the tactic side of it, what's going wrong, because you've got good players in that team. Like we went out and we bought, 12 players, 12 new signings, for a championship club, that's massive. And they were all permanent signings. So we dropped a lot of cash, and obviously they're not proven. They're unknowns in Latte Lath, they've come from different leagues, and it's obviously about gelling them that, but still the recruitment team and staff believe that they're up for, the championship, and we're going to provide the oomph that we needed. But it just hasn't worked so far, and unfortunately, you can't sack a whole team, but you can sack one man in the manager. I don't want it to happen. I think Carrick is still the right man to take us forward. I don't know who's out there apart from Steve Bruce. Please, Steve Bruce, keep your phone off. And
Johnson?
I just don't know who would come in to correct the club at the moment, unless we get someone that's already employed. Because at the moment, no manager's sitting on the sidelines screaming at me going, my God, what a replacement that would be. I still think Carrick is the right man to take us forward. I still think he's got it in him. I just need, we just need to start seeing some of these, performances. Well, that QPR game on the weekend was one of the worst games. If you go back and watch my live stream covering it, was one of the worst games I've ever watched of a Middlesbrough team play.
Even Jack Colback scored.
Woefully bad. Oh, Steve, I tell you, mate, I could have scored. Do you know what I mean? You and I, with our garden shears, could have scored. Do you know what I mean? And then we would have gone back to picking daffodils on the side. It was...
Look at the stats,
all over the shop,
16,
mate.
You had 16 shots on target. You had 9 shots on target, and you had 62% possession, which you should have because you're at home. So to me, that tells me the one thing that's going wrong with Middlesbrough is, and you've mentioned it there in your summary, is that the strikers just can't hit a barn door. You haven't, but the creativity's there. The creativity's there.
Yeah.
It's as obvious as what last season's success was, because even last season you could see that we would always concede goals, but we had such, for the Championship, and we can't compare it obviously with Newcastle in the Premier League, for the Championship we had such a strike force, and you had Chuba, who was absolutely flying, being able to just be in the right place at the right time, most of the time on the end of a Giles cross coming in, winging in to score goals, that we would have a 20-minute purple patch in a game and we'd score 3. So it didn't matter if we conceded. And it was a real false sense of security last season. We would quite regularly go a goal down, and the fans would be going, that's all right, we've got 86 minutes to sort this out. We'll be fine. Exactly. We'll be fine. Now, remove that 45 million quid's worth of strike force, which we did in the summer, and not replace it like for like. I think was telling everybody that if we don't shore up the defence, if we don't get stronger, if we don't play as a solid unit at the back and we still leak goals, it's going to be a struggle. And that's exactly what's happened.
Exactly.
And I'm not a football manager. And 20,000 people at the Riverside are not football managers. But everybody's talking exactly the same.
Yeah. And you know what? It's we made, and touching on what Steve had to say as well, in Latte Lath had 3 or 4 chances in there that he should have buried. He made Begovic look like the keeper of the year. I mean, it was incredible how many chances he had one-on-one with Asmir Begovic, and Begovic just ran at him, shut him down, big presence, and and managed to squeeze the gap that was left for Latte to put one behind him, and it was look.
Isaiah Jones the same. Isaiah Jones the same.
It was,
1-on-1. And Begovic made himself look as large as the Transporter Bridge in front of that goal.
Yeah, I think
it'll be interesting.
Out of the 3 clubs this weekend, Middlesbrough are really in the worst state out of all 3. I mean, Newcastle, the reality of Newcastle is that they're dealing with now expectations. You know what I mean? Because the expectations for Newcastle with the money and Champions League is the expectations go up and the demands go up. Do you know what I mean? So it's been disappointing in the terms of results, but they can't fault that they're still in Champions League and they're still Premier League football and they've still got, the money and the players there. You look at Sunderland and we go, where's their strikers going from and all that, and they turn around and beat Southampton 5-0. And Middlesbrough, at the moment, and there's no light for us at the moment, unless Michael Carrick can pull a rabbit out of the hat in the next 2 weeks. It's just it's really dark at the moment in terms of where's our win going to come from, where's our goal scorers going to come from, where's our defence going to shape up, sort of thing. So.
The whole scenario has turned on its head in the Northeast in the space of 3 days. Because on Friday on the Legend Show, Darren Williams is shaking his head and saying, I just don't know what's happening at the Stadium of Light. I just don't know what's happening. We were approaching the transfer window. It looked like Stewart was going to go. It looked like Roberts was going to go, etc. Lyndon Gooch had already gone. And he's just going, it's a fire sale. It's a fire sale. What the hell's going on? And then 24 hours later, 5-0 against Southampton, absolutely flying. And there's Boro and Newcastle scratching their heads going, where's the next point going to come from?
It's wild,
come on, Macca.
You go, Macca.
We've kept Macca quiet.
We have. We're going to unleash the beast.
I'll sit back and sip my coffee while I grace in your happiness. Let's go.
What can you say about the Red and White Wizards? Honestly, just amazing. Over 41,000 were there on Saturday, and Sunderland just got out the traps really, really quickly. Obviously, 52 seconds quickly, and it was just amazing. And I just think everyone was so shocked because we just didn't know where that was coming from. I mean, I think Southampton went into it I think they'd won 2, I think, or 1-3 and 1-2 and drawn 1, I think. And you're thinking, wow, don't get me wrong, they still had a bit of a spell of pressure, but that was just, I think, because Sunderland sort of got pushed back. But they're fair play to Sunderland, and to answer all the critics, and after all of the uproar of the transfer window as well, and I'm delighted for Tony and the lads. And of course, it turns out that, ironically, our next game after the international break is Queen's Park Rangers. So away. So
you'll probably do them, knowing the Borough. You'll probably do them.
I hope so. It'll be interesting to hear what everyone out there's got to say. I'm sure Dave will give out the contact details.
I keep forgetting, and I don't want to hear from people this morning. Actually, I do. Give us your views. Sunderland fans, Borough fans, Newcastle fans. I suppose Newcastle fans, the question is it time to get concerned? Are you concerned, or is everything fine? Eddie's going to sort it. For Sunderland fans, there's only one question to ask, and that's, come on, give us your views on the weekend. 5-0 against Southampton, a much fancied side as well, Southampton, for returning to the Premier League. Borough fans, there's a million questions we could ask. Give us your views. The number is 0330 043 2002. It's a WhatsApp number. You can just WhatsApp your comments through 0330 043 2002. Fellas, I think it's worth pointing out as well, we've got 2 tickets to give away to see, and the Borough fans will not thank me for this one. We've got 2 tickets to give away to see Kevin Keegan and Peter Reid this Thursday night at South Shields Football Club. So Reedy and KK, apparently they bounce off each other really well. Lee Clark was saying on Friday night that he's seen the 2 in action, and it's going to be a tremendous night at South Shields Football Club. Tickets are still for sale, start from £50. But there were 2 we're giving away today, are VIP tickets, so it's going to be a meet and greet with the 2 former managers. You'll get to see the guys before the show goes on at South Shields this Thursday night. We're gonna what we're gonna do? We're going to give them away to the best comment of the show, guys.
Yeah, we will.
How are we gonna do this?
I think so. Yeah.
So come on then.
Anyone that gets involved through the WhatsApp line and gives us the best reaction or moment from the weekend or best comment, I think definitely we'll be looking on that WhatsApp feedback for those tuning in and
so
give away 2 pretty cool tickets actually.
They are actually. Do you know what? They're worth about £200 these tickets. So I mean that's because they're the DBs of tickets. Meet and greets, food on. You get to meet the guys, shake their hands, say hello, ask them whatever question you've ever wanted to ask them, and then watch the show. So that number again, get your comments in. Borough fans, Newcastle fans, Sunderland fans, 0330 043 2002. Sorry, fellas, had to throw that one in. And if anybody still wants to go, there's tickets. Get in touch with South Shields Football Club. There are tickets still up for grabs for Thursday night. Right, we were in the afterglow of Sunderland, weren't we?
Chris Reid scored as well, Macca.
Yeah. Yes.
What was that goal like?
It was just brilliant. All round performance was just really, really good. And I just think that's 2 clean sheets in a row now after Coventry the week before. And I just think, Tony Mowbray prides himself on defence and defending but like you say, no one can really knock Sunderland after Saturday. And if you look at Southampton, by the way, their next 2 games, Leicester and then an in-form Ipswich. So I wonder where their next points are coming from as well. Yeah, and it's just credit to Sunderland for going out there and putting on a performance against, like you say, one of the most fancied sides in the Championship.
I've got to take my hat off.
Can I ask you, Macca? Sorry,
I was just going to say.
Can I ask you, Macca, at the end of?
Go on.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I just wanted to know how Macca was feeling come midnight, end of transfer deadline day. That's all. As a Sunderland fan, we didn't have any Sunderland fans on the show on Friday. We were worried going into the breakfast show. Steve and I were talking about what's going to happen to Sunderland today because we were waking up to the news that Ross Stewart was going to leave. Lyndon Gooch was going to leave. It looked like Jack Clark wasn't happy.
Yep.
Yeah, Patrick Roberts rumoured to go as well. So come midnight, after the day you had, you got a couple of, strikers in and loans. How were you feeling come midnight, end of transfer deadline day?
A mixture of emotions, really. Wondering what was going on behind the scenes. wondering about how the new players that he brought in is going to impact on the club, what they're going to do. Would there be replacements for, good, decent replacements for the players we let go? Annoyed at Ross Stewart, because I just feel the fact that he's gone to Southampton and the way that he went about it as well was just, So it was all of a mixture of emotions, but all them emotions and the worry got taken away on Saturday at 12:30, and the relief was palpable. I mean, wow, I was just so relieved that the lads could come out there and put a performance on like that, because I certainly wasn't expecting it. I don't know if any Sunderland fans in the world were expecting that, to be honest.
I mean, earlier Rai touched on expectancy, and I've got to take my hat off to Macca, because the expectancy that was created by the club, the team, for the fans after last season was massively heightened, because I'm sure every Sunderland fan I've spoken to said if we could have finished mid-table, I'd have been delighted. To be in the playoffs at the end of your first season back in the Championship really raised expectations. And now you've gone and done Southampton 5-0. I mean, the expectation level is going to be massive, isn't it, going forward?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, obviously, if you look at last season, we played most of the season without a fit striker. And obviously, the expectation is just, it was huge. It was huge. And I think, like you say, I'd have been happy with mid-table last year as well. So to get to the playoffs was a big achievement, And then this season, just going into it, losing obviously Ahmed Diallo, which is a massive loss for us. You're always wondering what we're going to do, and we've just got to keep on the run that we're going on. And 4 points from our last two games is good. And I don't know what I think about the international break. Has it come at the right time for Sunderland, or I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. What do you think? It's come at the right time?
Well, you got two wins and a draw, haven't you? You're on the back of two wins and a draw going into it, so the form had just changed for you. But I don't think it's going to have an issue. I don't think I think people put too much on international breaks. It's come at the right time. It's come at the wrong time. Saying that, at least it gives Michael Carrick now a good 10 days on the training ground with most of his players not thinking about putting 11 out on the field. Let's hope he can use that time wisely. But I've noticed that Steve's gone very quiet.
Well, now, I wanted to ask Steve, because I want to take the pressure off us here, Dave. Okay?
Good man.
We've heard about Sunderland. Woo! The roses are great, and we love Macca, and I'm crying. But I want to talk to you, Steve. Fabian Schär, what's happened there? Do we know anything yet? Because it looked like he suffered a pretty bad injury there.
Well, he is the king of injuries, isn't he? I mean, he always seems to collapse on the ground. He gets knocked out, but he gets back up again in Chumbawamba style. But he's ultimately with Fabian, he is made of rock, and he'll be okay. I'm sure. I think he'll be fine. I mean, he's got 2 weeks to pull himself back round. But yeah, I mean, it's hard now at mouths, and that's what I was saying before about the back four. We did need to make a reinforcement there, and with Botman only missing one game, it's still a huge blow, and it just shows the frailties we've got at the back. Dan Burn was asked to go in and do a job with Fabian Schär. He hasn't played at centre half for best part of a year and a half, and he looked a little bit out of place. And the distance between the two centre halves was clear for all to see against Brighton at times, and Brighton managed to take full advantage of that. So look, it's not crisis time at Newcastle. 3 defeats against 3 teams that were there or thereabouts last season. Manchester City, of course, treble winners. Liverpool, of course, are a huge club, but did finish behind us last season, and of course Brighton as well. But it was a tough start. It was always going to be a tough start. I did hope and think that Newcastle would have had more points in the bag going into this international break, but it wasn't to be. We have now got a set of fixtures, though, ultimately, which after the international break, as long as Eddie can keep the morale up and get the lads, firing on all cylinders again, could see Newcastle, looking at a completely different side, and fortune's looking bright now. We've got Brentford at home, got Sheffield United away, and then we've got Burnley at home. I mean, 3 games where you're looking at and saying, Newcastle United should at least pick up 7 points. But the problem is, as I mentioned before, it's the fixture pile up. In between that, we've got AC Milan away, Manchester City at home in the League Cup, and Paris Saint-Germain at home. So you know that puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? You know, you're looking at that saying, wow, you know, and if you pick up another injury or two, especially as you say to somebody like Fabian Schär or you know another defender, Newcastle could struggle. But look, it's not doom and gloom. You know, if you're a Newcastle fan or a Boro fan, you were wise to avoid social media at the weekend because it would be in a cesspit. But go back on with your head held high.
I had nothing to say.
Yeah, and look ahead. And the question I was trying to ask Macca before, but obviously we're all jumping in, was Chris Rigg. You know, I saw the delight on his face as he reeled away after scoring that goal in the 95th minute. He looks as if he's really settled in, and I did say this to you, Macca, when you were on last week. He's going to be, you know, a great prospect, you know, Newcastle fan at Sunderland, but he looks, all intents and purposes, 100% committed to the cause, and you must be really excited about Chris Rigg, mate.
Absolutely. I mean, and the fans showed their appreciation by singing he's one of our own. Chris Rigg, you know, to come through, get his chance in the FA Cup last year, absolutely delighted. And I'm just delighted the fact there was 4 different goal scorers. You know, I'm happy for Ekwa. I wish Ekwa got his hat-trick, but sadly he didn't. But Chris Rigg, to come off the bench and get that goal, you know, brilliant. And that was just icing on the cake, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Where was he born? Where was he born, Chris Rigg? Anyone know?
He's a Gateshead lad, isn't he? He's definitely Gateshead. His family's all Newcastle fans, and he was it.
Hebburn. I've just pulled it up.
There you go.
So he's a Hebburn boy. Yeah. So well, I suppose that's on the black and white side, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, probably 50-50, I would have said, but you know, there's probably a lot of Sunderland there as well as Newcastle. But you know, his family are notorious for being, you know, for being Newcastle through and through. And there was hope that he was going to come there before he signed professional contracts. But no, I think that's going to save Sunderland a lot of money. And I think if they seem to be treating him in the right way and putting him through, and you know, I think he'll do well at Sunderland, and he could just be the diamond in Sunderland's team this year, which they could end up being surprise contenders again.
Yeah.
It's time to take a break.
It by the river?
Oh, sorry.
Do you split it by the river? Just quickly, do you split it by the River Tyne? Is that how is that? Because I know there's a town here in Australia where we've got it's literally got a river that goes straight up the middle of it, and it splits the two towns together. And if you're on one side of the river, then you are that, and if you're on the other side of the river, and that. So looking at the River Tyne, obviously going straight between Newcastle and Sunderland. Is it, if you're born on this side of the river, closer to Sunderland, are you Sunderland, and on that side you are Newcastle? Is that, do you work it the same like that?
Not as easy as that, is it, Steve?
No, there's another river. I mean, you've got the River Wear in Sunderland. No, I mean, you'll get people who say that you've got to be born within the view of St James's Park to be a Geordie. If you're born in the RVI, then you're a Newcastle.
So
you're a Newcastle man. If you're born on the south of the river,
Newcastle, yeah.
If you're born on the south of the river, people say you're not a Geordie. So if you were born in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Gateshead, then people say no, you're not a Geordie. But it's open. It's conjecture, isn't it?
We have this bizarre situation with Sunderland fans. I don't know if it's still to the modern day, but I remember it at Roker Park when I used to go to Roker Park to report on games. The crowd would start singing Mackham's Geordies, and it was those Sunderland fans who were, if you like, north of the Cleedon Hill, almost on the, like South Shields, almost on the banks of the Tyne. Still Sunderland fans, but they used to consider themselves as Geordies because they were right next to the Tyne. And yet there was the rest of the Sunderland fans who were, Cleedon and South and into Sunderland and into County Durham. The fans, even the Sunderland fans were confused. They used to sing Mackham's Geordies. Don't know whether Macca, does that happen to the present day? Do they still shout that or not?
No.
That's gone, has it?
In fact, Sunderland have a big supporters branch in Gateshead as well, and Hebburn and all over Jarrah. So well supported club.
Well, I think we went there last week, didn't we, with all three? Right, it's time to take a break, fellas. We're going to recharge our glasses. We're going to mop up the tears, and we will prepare the hardy plants that need to go into the garden because August is finished and we're into September now. Because we don't want to talk football all the time. But if you've got a view, Newcastle fans, come on, are you starting to get a bit worried? Give us a WhatsApp or 330-043-2002. Sunderland fans, tell us how cock a hoop you are. And I saw the social media post, Steve, where they're saying the richest club in the world's got beat again. So they're very loud at the moment. Sunderland fans, 0330 043 2002. And Boro fans, what are your thoughts? Come on. It's 10 without a win in league competition. 033 or 043 2002. And remember, the best comment that comes through this morning will take those 2 VIP tickets to see Kevin Keegan and Peter Reid at South Shields Football Club this coming Thursday night. So that number once again, 0330 043 2002.
Something inside so strong.
Well, it's certainly not like the Boro defence, is it? Something inside so strong, that's for sure. Oh, dear me. It is.
We were still talking offline, weren't we, Dave? We're still sitting there, even through the ad break, through the music, going, what is happening? I've never noticed that. We normally take a break to save our voices and have a drink of water, but Dave and I still sitting there going, what's going on? Oh, my goodness,
and then Steve was chipping in saying, fellas, I think your body's swerving the Boro on air. We need to talk more about the Boro. Is that because he wants to avoid talking Newcastle at the moment?
100%.
And then Macca's just sitting there cock-a-hoop, isn't he? With a big grin on his face.
Yeah. Just go get a couple of lads, come back, let me know when you need me.
Yeah.
God bless the red and white Wizards.
I tell you what, on the Legends on Friday night, it was hilarious. So Lee Clark immediately jumped in, started talking about Newcastle. So the first part of the show was all about Newcastle. Then Daz Williams started talking about Sunderland. And when it came to Higgy, it's like, Higgy, what are your thoughts on the Boro? He just said, there's somebody at the door, will be back in 25 minutes.
What an answer. I should have done that as well.
Oh, I know. I should have just stayed in bed this morning, then none of you could have been on. We wouldn't have heard the gloats from Wayside, but there you go. No, look, I'm delighted for you, Macca. I don't even say it through gritted teeth, because right now the Boro doesn't deserve to be anywhere other than where they are. But Sunderland, I just love what Tony Mowbray is doing, and he's doing it in such testing circumstances, with the club talking to a potential replacement manager, towards the end of last season. Mogga not sure what's going on. I'm sure he's not having too active a role in all the recruitment strategy, and yet he can pull the troops together, and he can do Southampton 5-0. It just shows you a mark of the man and what he can do.
Mowbray's a magician. He's a magician.
And he was given.
I tell you what, if it keeps going, we were talking about this last week, Dave, weren't we, on the show, that about Mogga and the situation at Sunderland. I tell you what, if it keeps going the way it's going and Sunderland end up, for whatever reason, there's still the distrust, or there's the talk between, Sunderland owners and Mogga. I tell you what, Mogga could end up back at the Boro. I wouldn't shake my head at that, with the way he gets the defence going and stuff like that.
I'd love to see him come back, because he was given such a hard task when he was here the first time. Mogga took over from Gordon Strachan, who destroyed the club. And, Mogga had to come in and sort out all that mess.
Scottish Revolution.
He had to cut the wage bill. He had to not only put the playing side of the club on an even keel. He had to do it, from a financial perspective, with players in the squad that really shouldn't have been there. The money that had been spent on that. So he had a real tough job on his hands, Mogga. I don't think the Boro fans got to see the best of Tony Mowbray as a manager.
He's a good Championship manager, lads. I've watched him, and every time he goes in, he can sort things out. The way he handles himself at press conferences and stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, of course he is, and I think ultimately for Boro, I think I can hear you. You'd love to have him at the club. He is a Boro legend. I mean, you go back to those days, Dave, when when the padlocks went on when the old gates at Essen, and that was his club. It's his club.
86. Remember it? Yeah, remember it well. Because I'm old. Yeah. But Mogga, I remember the days when he made his debut, and he was playing alongside Gary Pallister, and what a pairing they were. Two local-ish boys, shall we say. We've as Boro fans, we've seen Mogga and probably followed Mogga's progress, even when he went up north of the border, which we won't mention, Macca, because we don't want to talk Scotland on a sad footballing day like it is today. So the Boro fans have followed him, and we don't. I think almost en masse, we don't believe he was given as strong a hand as he could have been given when he came to the Riverside and had to take over the managerial reins. So, maybe he will come back one day. Who knows? Maybe he will move on to Newcastle, Steve, and then he becomes the only manager to have managed all three. Who knows?
Exactly. You never know. One day it could happen. He might get all the Saudi cash to play with.
Oh, you mentioned it. Good man.
He brought it up. He brought it up.
He did.
Yeah, come on, we're getting through this
you.
first hour without you mentioning it, lads. I thought I'll get it in first.
Ask you. What are your thoughts when you got an ex-player in Jermaine Jenas coming out on? He's obviously on BBC Match Day criticising the current players and the former club.
You know, Jermaine Jenas is somebody who, he came to Newcastle. He was nurtured under Sir Bobby Robson, and he left under a bit of a cloud because he was the man who came out, of course, with that infamous phrase, living in a goldfish bowl in Newcastle, and that's why he didn't want to be here. He obviously went down to Spurs, and from his perspective, he probably feels his career went on to do great things. But he's ended up becoming a media star because he doesn't just do Match of the Day. He does other programs. He does a lot of the European games. He does
the One Show.
The One Show. Yeah, the One Show. So he does some other stuff as well. So he's become a bit of a star, and I think Jermaine Jenas just joins the long list of ex-players who has to stay relevant, has to stay in the spotlight. And occasionally saying something controversial about one of your former clubs is the way to get column inches. It's the way to get clicks and get stuff put out there. When I listened to what he said on Match of the Day, he pointed out that Fabian Schär simply stuck a leg out. And, I could probably go through a show reel of Jermaine Jenas' games and probably find a game where he stuck a leg out. So I just genuinely think it was, I think it was uncalled for. I think I went through the deficiencies, that we had at the weekend. Fabian Schär wasn't one of them. And, I think he was wide of the mark with that. But yeah, he does like to have a go at Newcastle. He's certainly not a Newcastle fan. Whenever Newcastle have done well, he always seems to find a negative, I just think there's an underlying issue with his time at the club, which is sad that he allows that to stand in the way of being positive or negative at the right time and in the right place. But it happens with a lot of people. Michael Owen didn't have the best time at Newcastle. Whenever you see him on TV, he's very similar. Will be quite disparaging towards Newcastle, even if they're playing well. And you don't get the balance sometimes, but we've got Alan Shearer on Match of the Day who always gives an honest opinion, but he at least that in that way that there's usually a balance. But we didn't get it at the weekend, not with Jermaine Jenas. And I don't think Newcastle fans will be losing any sleep over his opinions.
Got a funny story about Jermaine Jenas. So when he first came to Newcastle, everybody was calling him Jenas. Jermaine Jenas, do you remember? And we were at I think it was a Newcastle Boro game. I'm sure it was a Newcastle Boro game, and we were in the press box. And at half time, Mark Hannon, who was and still is the Newcastle press officer, came out with a statement, and he was handing the statement out, written down, being printed out, many sheets as the sheets were being passed around all the journalists. And I looked at the sheet, and it was actually a statement from Mrs. Jenas, his mum, saying everybody's mispronouncing my son's name. It's Jenas, not Genus. And that must have been super embarrassing for the lad. It must have been.
When your mum has to come out and defend your name, that's that's pretty bad, isn't it? When you've just got been introduced to a new football club, I'm sure the lads would have jumped on that for sure.
Brilliant. Mrs. Jenas was not happy.
That's brilliant. What a great
but we
story.
See current players as well. I mean, I wanted to talk to you guys as well and get your feedback as well. Obviously, when your team isn't performing well, you get your old players seem to be jumping in, especially like Steve said, when they're an ex-player. The niceties don't seem to grab the headlines, do they? And we all know that the controversial, the more sort of, I guess, hate you can put on your former club seems to grab, because it's like, oh my God, did you see what he said, sort of thing. And I wanted to talk to you guys, and we spoke about it last week with social media and Lascelles, obviously in the off-field drama. But we saw on the weekend Jadon Sancho, an England superstar, not getting a game for Man United and coming out, and and Ten Hag was asked after the game, "Where's Jadon? What's going on?" And he said, "Listen, he's not training the way I expect him to train. He's not up to the level in training. He's just not putting in like the other boys. I pick the players that are putting in the training, and that's who gets my vote." And then, and literally 30 minutes later, if that, we saw Jadon on Twitter straight away with an actual statement, which is incredible because they've got the access to it and they can see the fans. And I'll read you quickly what Jadon had to say. "Please don't believe everything you read. I will not allow people saying things that is completely untrue. I've conducted myself in training very well this week. I believe there are other reasons for this matter that I won't go into. I've been a scapegoat for a long time, which isn't fair. All I want to do is play football with a smile on my face and contribute to my team. I respect all decisions that are made by the coaching staff, and I play with fantastic players and grateful to do so, which I know every week is a challenge. I will continue to fight for this badge no matter what. And it just again emphasizes for me that the current day and age with players and the access to social media and stuff like that, you wouldn't have seen that back in the 80s. Can you imagine someone coming out, under one of the managers or gaffers in the 80s or 90s saying, the manager's, telling fibs, that sort of thing? They would have got smacked around the ears. And I wanted to get your boys' feedback on, again, what you guys see when you see a current player coming out on social media and going against their current gaffer. And I'll start with you, Steve.
I've read this story since you brought it up, and it's a strange one. Manchester United, they're not a happy club at the moment. They've had 4 games, 2 wins, 2 defeats. Sometimes they've looked as if they're the Manchester United of old. Other times they haven't. They've got a multitude of players that could play. They've spent a ridiculous amount of money. They've got a takeover at the club, which is seemingly never going to happen because it just seems as if the Glazers are messing people around, certainly messing the fans around. You had the fans staging a protest last week, for 45 minutes after the game, a sit-in protest. So this is just another story which the club can do without. Sancho went there, a big money signing. He could have walked into any club really. Manchester United managed to attract him. The fact that he was left out of the squad that lost to Arsenal, of course, it's always worse when the team actually loses the game. And they could have won it. Let's face it, because Manchester United had a goal disallowed through VAR. Arsenal go up the other end and score, and the game's over. But Ten Hag's the manager. He's the person who, works, and we have this conversation about Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Sunderland on this show. Ten Hag is the manager who works day to day with Sancho. It is his job to coach him. It is his job to decide whether he is the person to pick and put in that position in the team. He clearly doesn't feel he can trust him and doesn't feel that he is at the correct level. So, the way that it works in football, I'm afraid, is that, unless the owners are sick of the manager, then they have to go with his judgment. And, it's something which has had me scratching my head, I've got to be honest, because, when I watched Sancho in the past and watched him, certainly, he's an England international, watched him play for England, he looks a great player, very, very talented player.
Agreed.
But to actually, I find it strange that Ten Hag has come out and said that he's, poor performances in training are the reason behind his absence, and that is only going to lead to one thing, and that's not going to cheer the player up. It's not going to lead to the player putting in a better effort. It's going to lead to this mess that we're now seeing. And this is what we're saying last week. Social media is an absolute nightmare, and
it is.
Sometimes social media, accounts, we also have to remember, are either not run by the player, they're run by their agent, or there's a shared ownership on there where the player can tweet, the agent can tweet, and that's the problem as well. We're all led to believe this is Sancho who's put this out there. Is it the agent who's not happy?
True,
is it the agent who might want him to go to Saudi for 2 years and get daft money to play for for a couple of years out there just to get him out of the club? But there's another thing now happened, which is Piers Morgan, of course, who does his own chat show on ITV. He's now come out and offered the opportunity via Twitter to Sancho to go on his talk show, which was So I'm going to use this opportunity now to say to Sancho, who I'm sure will be sitting at home now listening to this,
of course he will.
Via some dodgy stream. Get yourself on this show. We will let you tell your side of the story.
We'll get you on as soon as we've got Danny Minogue on. After that, we got we want Sancho breaking news, Danny Minogue breaking news.
Macca, what do you think about this?
Macca, what would you do, right? So you obviously saw Ross Stewart leave on deadline day. How would you feel as a Sunderland fan if he now came out onto social media and said, this is what's actually happening in the club, and obviously just slated the club on social media?
I would find it very disrespectful, and I think, on the Man United thing, obviously they clearly don't like going to North London because they lost to Tottenham as well. and they had 13 minutes at a time with Arsenal, but that's another issue in itself. But what I would say is, Ten Hag, do you not applaud his honesty? Like him coming out and saying, look, he's not up to the standard that I want him to be at, you know. And if you were a player, you would think to yourself, well, I'm not going to, you know, like back in the 80s, 90s, if the manager came out and said that, you think, right, I'm going to do everything I can to prove him wrong. You know, you wouldn't be thinking about resorting to social media. And surely a player of such Sanchez's stature would be thinking to himself, right, I'm not going to go on social media, I'm just going to go out with the right attitude. And if he says I'm not training the best I can be, I'm going to go out and I'm going to train and I'm going to show him that I can be picked in the first 11 every week. Because like you say, he's a talented player.
You know, that's what you would think that would happen. But then Sancho comes on social media and says, don't believe everything you read. I will not allow people saying things, aka Ten Hag, to say things that are completely untrue. So you've literally automatically then gone and said, nah, the gaffer's lying, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and what he's saying about me is just simply, you know, not accurate and it's untrue.
Yeah,
so
you don't go on social media when you're a manager and say you're not training properly. This is the reason you're not playing, or you go on TV and say that. I'm not being funny, like, but all of these things should be kept in the dressing room. They're kept for the training ground and kept for the dressing room. And this shows to me there's a complete lack of respect between the two. And
I agree.
You know, Manchester United, they seem to have had like an ongoing issue with the last few managers have had a player or two in the dressing room who've caused an argument in an empty room. Paul Pogba, you know, there's another one who split people's opinions. Yeah. And he had such an inflated ego, such a huge ego, and he just dominated the headlines. He wasn't that good. He seemed to be more interested in what he was wearing and what he was doing in his other activities. And then Manchester United.
I'd have him for Boro.
Cristiano. Well, they bring in Cristiano. Then whoever sanctions the deal to bring Cristiano Ronaldo into the same dressing room as Paul Pogba. I mean, it was comical because you knew that those two, you know, this town isn't big enough for the both of us, kind of thing. You know, the two of them were. You can imagine them sitting on opposite sides of the dressing room with all their bling on. I mean, it's just laughable. It's laughable. It really is.
They'll have had to reinforce the changing room floor to take the extra weight of all the gold that was going to be in there.
Exactly.
There's 2 points. There's 2 points from my perspective here that we can't afford to overlook. One is, and it was something I was reading at the weekend. Fabrizio Romano has come out and done a podcast interview. This is the guy who now seemingly gets all the transfer information, all the gossip first, and he's fairly accurate. And what he was saying was he now gets a ton of agents contacting him saying, can you put a story out here? Can you put a story out there? Yeah. You know, now these are agents who are driving their best interests and what they feel are the best interests of their players that they represent, and that could be to force a move, to create a situation, to start easing out a player from a football club because they might not be happy where he is. So let's not forget it could be an agent who's involved in this. And as you said, Steve, a lot of agents have got people running social media accounts for the players. So that's that one. The other one is, if it is Sancho who's come out and made this statement, there's only going to be one winner. Whether it's right or wrong, there will be only one winner, and that'll be Eric Ten Hag, because this will be the start of Sancho leaving Manchester United. I've got no doubt whatsoever about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's getting the numbers.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. No, I think we saw it as well with Damar. We saw it with Demarai Gray as well. You know, if I flick over, it's happening. You know, it's not just Man United. We obviously focusing here on Sancho, but if you have a look at Demarai Gray over at Everton, right? He came out. Obviously, Sean Dyche, the manager there, he had this to say directly after a game. Everton fans have always been great with me, but it's so difficult to play for someone who doesn't show you respect as a person. Now, I just can't fathom a player coming out and saying about that their current manager. How can you continue? You know, transfer window's now shut. Unless you want to go on in there and rip your contract up, how can you say that and not expect to be playing under 21s for the rest of the season? It's incredible. And to see whether it's Sancho, whether it's Gray actually saying this stuff, whether it's their agents ringing up Fabrizio or controlling their things, you know, trying to force, you know, their manager's hand to get their player game time, whatever it may be. It is so disrespectful to the paying fans to see a player come out and criticise the current management, the current club. It just oozes unprofessionalism for me. And seeing Gray say it's someone who doesn't respect me as a person. I mean, that's on a personal level. That's taking the football side out of it. With Sancho, we can at least say, well, he's saying this about training and it's not true and stuff there. But Gray's come out and said he's a distrustful person. He doesn't respect me. It's incredible to see the current day and age player and how they go about their business when they spit the dummy, they have got a platform now to show exactly how the dummy spit's going to go down.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think it's just ultimately there's lack of respect as well. I think sometimes players now walk in and they're commanding such a huge wage, and they're getting paid a ridiculous amount of money to kick a football around, and the managers are getting a fraction of that, and there's just a complete lack of respect. And I think it goes at there's different levels, but that's what I was saying about Pogba before. He clearly just didn't have any respect for anybody in that dressing room, including the manager, and if they get drops, they shrug their shoulders because they're just, they're getting paid a vast amount of money to sit at home and play on the PlayStation. This is the problem. This is the problem we're in. It's created some real monsters, and if you chuck in the added problem of social media, where they've got a chance to go out and say what they want to say, then that's it. But I would imagine, Dave, you've probably sorted contracts out for many people, over the years. I would imagine there must be things in the contract to say that if you breach certain rules and regs with social media, that your contract can be terminated. There must be something like that, Dave, in footballers' contracts.
Yeah, gross misconduct clauses, and that would come under gross misconduct if you start slagging off your club or your manager. So there are, but I think it was Lee Clark a couple of weeks ago was saying on the Legends that players this day and age have too much power. It's all about the players now. The club have, I suppose the club have ultimate power because the manager can decide whether this player is going to rot in, it's the old phrase, rot in the reserves, even though we don't have reserve teams anymore, or is just going to sit on the bench and certainly not play in the starting 11. But all the power seems to have shifted to the players. So maybe players are now becoming emboldened to be able to make these sort of comments.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Look, it's incredible, to see. And like Steve said, surely in this day and age, you have to put in some sort of social media guideline or something like that, because you can't have Gray and coming out saying, as a club owner, can you imagine, the business side of things, the guys in suits that sit behind the desk, when you've got a player that you're paying a contract, I'm guessing Gray's asking, is demanding a massive wage, and he comes out and says, the manager doesn't disrespect me. And again, not unfortunately, but the club then have to turn and go, well, we can sack the player who we think, is a star, or we can get rid of the manager and make Gray happy. You know what I mean? And then does it put more pressure on someone like Sean Dyche when he said, I've been doing all I can. We just, like human things, two humans just don't get along, but it's easier to sack a manager than it is easier to sack the player. So it's just, it's incredible.
Macca, what do you think about all of this social media stuff?
I think obviously it's another problem that Everton don't need, isn't it? And like you say, Sean Dyche and that, and I agree with what you were saying about players that just have too much power because they get too much money, basically, and that's what it comes down to, isn't it? It all boils down to money and power, and I think there should be a rule that you shouldn't be allowed, or like you tweets and stuff should be verified by the club's media officer when the players put out a tweet when it mentions the club or the manager, because like you say, especially if you're under pressure as well, and the fans will do anything to try and get away from the pressure. The last thing they want to see is a row between the player and the manager on social media, if you know what I mean. So
yep. We'll carry this one over into the next hour, fellas. We've got to take a bit of news shortly, but just a reminder, if you want to get your comments in, Newcastle fans, on what's happening, couple of games without a victory now. Is it time to get worried? What's your thoughts from the weekend, the 3-1 at Brighton? Give us a shout, 0330 043 2002. That's the WhatsApp number to get straight through to the studio for the North East Footy Breakfast, 0330 043 2002. Sunderland fans, come on, now is the time to gloat. We all thought it was doom, gloom and despondency on Friday as the transfer window deadline approached. And look what you did to Southampton. Again, 0330 2002. Boro fans, should we just leave it there? Boro fans, your thoughts? Look, it's no winning league competition in 10. How much of a crisis is on the hands? 0330 043 2002. And the best comments on the show this morning will get a pair of VIP tickets to go and see Peter Reid, Kevin Keegan. I was going to say in concert. I don't think they'll be singing, but they'll certainly be singing footballing phrases, I'm sure, at South Shields Football Club. There's still tickets available there, but a couple of VIP tickets up for grabs. If you are the best WhatsApper, I think it's time for a bit of news. We'll be back after this, fellas.
From Yarm to Yibby, Harrington to Horsley Hill, Swarwell to Silverlink. Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
Right across the North East, the Red, the Toon and the Cat.
A man on the moon. If we can put a man on the moon, we can turn around the fortunes of the borough, I'm sure. Absolutely. Oh, no, that was the Americans, wasn't it? All right, we got no chance. Oh, boys, welcome back to hour two.
Fly me to the moon.
Oh, fly. Mogga. I mean, I don't know whether you know.
The Mogga days.
It is, yeah. I mean, that was all because of Mogga. It was, I don't know whether you know, Steve and Macca, where Fly Me to the Moon, which is a borough fanzine and platform, came from. It was a quote from Bruce Rioch where he was talking about Tony Mowbray, and when he was asked in one interview if there was one player, if he had to go to the moon and take one player with him, who would it be? And he turned around and he said it would be Tony Mowbray. So there you go, that's where Fly Me to the Moon comes from. But hey, Newcastle fans, Borough fans, Sunderland fans, love your views on WhatsApp this morning. The number is 0330 043 2002. Very different tales to tell across North East football this morning. Very different stories to reflect on from the weekend across North East football. Your views would be most welcome. Tell us what you think. 0330 043 2002. And we do have those two VIP tickets. Peter Reid, Kevin Keegan getting together at South Shields Football Club on Thursday night this coming week. I'll be there. You can best comments come through on WhatsApp. We'll grab those VIP tickets. I suppose Borough fans will be going, not interested. But for Sunderland fans, Newcastle fans, you can get across, see your former idols, and their meet and greet VIP tickets. So you get to shake hands with the boys. Steve, shaking hands with Kevin Keegan. How important would that be to Newcastle fans?
Massively important. Keegan, certainly somebody who changed Newcastle United's fortunes, not once but twice. Once as a player, of course, in that wonderful 82 to 84 spell, which led to Newcastle getting promotion with that front line of Keegan, Waddle, Beardsley under the stewardship of Arthur Cox. And then, of course, back off the golf course. He'd spent 7 years on a golf course in Marbella and then flew back into Scottish and Newcastle breweries, and under the stewardship of Sir John Hall created the entertainers, moulded a wonderful team, which of course Lee Clark, one of the legends, you can hear them every Friday on this channel, was part of, and we had some great years, and became, apart from Sunderland fans of course and Borough fans, everybody's favourite second team, and we went on to win absolutely nothing. But yes, Kevin Keegan is a legend on Tyneside, and I think one day, either a statue or a stand being named after him. I think that would be a fitting tribute to somebody who played a major part in our history. Yeah,
interesting. The current manager Eddie Howe. Let's reflect again on what's happened at the weekend. Obviously, I don't have to remind Steve, Newcastle going down 3-1 at Brighton when we all tipped them to win. I think, didn't we?
I went for a draw.
Oh, you went for a draw.
You did go for a draw.
You went for a draw. Okay. Yeah. I thought the boost of the Champions League draw and all that, all that positive hubbub around it would have lifted their performance. But hey, what do I know? Absolutely, proved completely a huge deficit, shall I say, in my footballing knowledge. Well, this is what Eddie Howe had to say. Thanks to Sky Sports after the game.
Yeah, I thought it was a good start from the team. I thought we were bright in the early stages. I thought we had a couple of really good chances to score, and when you come here, I think when you get those moments, you need to take them. We didn't. Uncharacteristic goals to concede today. The first one was disappointing for us. I think that's always key in the game, and the second one was a shock to the system, really, because I think in that moment it was a very even game, and I sort of felt that right the way through. I don't think they cut us open. I think the 3-1 scoreline is damaging for us, but I didn't think it reflected the whole game.
So was it flattering to Brighton, Steve, the 3-1 scoreline, as Eddie T he seems to suggest?
I would say yes, and I mean, I saw Kieran Trippier, come out as well and have a similar say. He's quite active on social media in the right way, win, lose or draw, and I mean, he made the point. He felt, like I said at the top of the show, that we should have been ahead. The first 5 minutes we should have been 2-0 up, but not taking your chances is an issue. We've seen that a few times already this season. You don't, and if you don't take your chances in the Premier League, you get caught out. That's the problem. It's a relentless league. Every team that you play is difficult, and you've got to be brave. You've got to take your chances. And Newcastle, as I keep mentioning as well, are in the Champions League now. We're going to have to be brave in that competition. We have got a top team. You don't become a bad team overnight. We're now going to have to reset. We're going to have to go on this international break. We're going to have to come back refreshed. And I think when you look at the whole, views of supporters, cross section of supporters across different social media, speaking to your mates, bumping into people, and when you're out and about, and we've all got an opinion. I think the consensus of opinion seems to be that substitutions are becoming predictable. Newcastle's style of play time can become predictable, but I just think it's simply not taking our chances, and the defensive frailties have shown up, unfortunately, this season. We have got an aging back four. Our back four, predominantly the average age is in its 30s. Now Newcastle have gone out and made some acquisitions. They brought in Livramento, they brought in Hall. Those are going to become players who will feature, I'm sure, quite regularly moving forward. But the other members of the team, Fabian Schär, which Rise already mentioned, Kieran Trippier, Dan Burn, they're all in their 30s, and this needs to be sorted out. Botman's the youngster, but of course he wasn't playing at the weekend, and he is a big miss when he's not playing. And Brighton have this conveyor belt of players. Look at what they've sold.
They're doing a brilliant job, aren't they?
Yeah, they bring Ferguson in, who bangs a hat trick in. You're thinking, wow, they got rid of Caicedo, they got rid of McAllister. Any other team, it would have torn them apart. And you've got to give credit to the manager, because it's the manager who has to deal with this. And I saw him at the end of last season admitting that it's going to be a tough summer because I'm going to lose these players, but credit to Brighton, absolute credit to Brighton, and I think you get the measure of me, lads, when I'm on. I do pay respect to the team if they've been a better team, and Brighton certainly were at the weekend, and it's there's no shame in it. It's tough. 3 defeats on the belt. We're not used to it, but we knew those fixtures were tough at the start of the season.
What sort of an impact has Tonali had?
I think it's just taking time. I still feel, and I've said this on my own podcast on NUFC Matters, that I feel that the 3 players in midfield need that time to play it together, and it's going to take a while. I think I hate to say unbalanced because it sounds like I'm being overcritical, but I think it's unbalanced, the team, to a degree that we're not doing what we did last season. The little triangle between Bruno, Almiron and Trippier, which paid us so well, and Almiron scored lots of goals. Bruno looked like he was the star player. I think that Bruno and Tonali are too similar, and I think we need to work out who is going to play the holding role, who's going to push up front. I just don't think it's worked out. There seems to be a cloud hanging over Bruno. I don't know what it is. I don't know why he doesn't seem to be playing as well as he has in the past. I can only put it down to the fact that it's a change in personnel and a slight change in the formation, and I think that's had a negative effect. And they'll get it right. They will get it right, but unfortunately at the moment it's just all doom and gloom. But Tonali looks classy. He looks great. But then I thought he was sloppy for one of the goals at the weekend. I think if you watch him, you watch that goal. It was the final goal of a final Brighton goal. He stood. He should have come out. He should have closed the man down. He didn't. He jogged out, and then you just see him stop. You see him turn, and as the shots hit, it flies past Nick Pope in the back of the net. And Nick Pope, again, you're only as good sometimes when you're in goal. You're only as good as the people in front of you. But I don't think he's had a good start to the season, Nick Pope, and that's a concern as well. So, but I could dissect the whole team, lads. It's a defeat against a team that was challenging us for a Champions League spot last year.
They were in Europe as well.
Yeah, it's done and dusted now. It's done and dusted now. We've got to dust ourselves off and go again after the international break. It's as simple as that.
Well, Nick Pope missing out on England selection as well, obviously last week. So obviously Nick Pope wasn't selected as well, which was a shock to me. I thought Nick Pope would have been, at least in the third. But, interesting that, obviously he hasn't had the greatest start to the season, and maybe obviously Southgate and that seeing in it. I mean, just touching on Brighton just quickly before we obviously move on to the Middlesbrough and Sunderland effort from the weekend. I think, for me, it's a bit of the case of stability. And just listen to they've had 3 managers since 2014. So 2014 to 2019 was Chris Hughton. Then they got in Graham Potter, obviously we all know that one, and that was from 2019 to 2022. Obviously Graham Potter left to go to the Chelsea job, and that obviously didn't go well. And now they've got Roberto De Zerbi as well, and obviously he's been in now since September 22, coming in after Graham Potter. So, I mean, there's since 2014 to only have 2 managers, and now obviously your current one, the stability there and a common goal seems to be, something that you need to tip your hat to, because I couldn't name many clubs that have only had that amount of managers in the space of almost 10 years.
No. And they're giving them time. They're giving the managers time as well. Yep,
they are. Yeah. They definitely are. And there's some trust there, isn't there, from the CEO? And you can see that, finally, even though we're talking, later down the track, obviously, there seems to be, there's a trust there that they're going to have the time to, fix up whatever needs to happen, sort of thing. And I think that can throw us over to old Michael Carrick at Middlesbrough. Obviously, Rye, the Middlesbrough fan from Australia.
It's all your fault.
Let's
your
cover
fault,
it
mate.
again. Yeah,
it's all your fault.
It is. I've gotten a few DMs asking me why I signed Sammy Silvera, because I had a lot to do with it. And I apologise. Kieran Scott and I, the head recruitment at Boro, we sat down. We said, "Look, who do you want, Rye?" I said, "Get me Sammy Silvera," and and now the fans are right to blame me for it, but. Look, the thing that scares me, not scares me, but I think Steve Gibson will give Michael Carrick time to get this right. He's had a great season since he came in last year, but we're having now 10 games on a row which have not, done well. And unfortunately, it's got the same signs as Jonathan Woodgate. Obviously, Jonathan Woodgate's his number 2 there as well. But when Jonathan Woodgate came in, we saw a young manager. We saw, Steve Gibson's putting a lot of trust into him, and we unfortunately saw the same sort of display as we saw on the weekend. That was the poorest display I've seen since a Woodgate managed team back in the day. So to see that happening again, and Woodgate still, obviously being Carrick's number 2, it is quite frightening. The other thing that frightens me, and I'd love to get fans' feedback, and obviously from the boys as well.
We've got some.
When Carrick come out and says he hopes to reboot and restart the season in the international break after we're already 4 or 5 games in, that scares me so much when you got your manager going, okay, don't worry, we're going to reboot and restart. Aren't we already past that? Aren't we well past the time period now where we can go back and restart and reboot? Obviously it's a case of we can't do anything else but restart and reboot, but it feels like to me he's just gone, right, I'm going to rip up if you're talking restart, reboot, that means everything you've worked on on this piece of paper over here, we rip that up and we go to this new fresh piece of paper and we go from here now. And it feels like it's a bit like we're already,
just 5 games in.
Lost the ball.
Yeah,
we're already 5 games in, and you're talking about rebooting and restarting. It scares me. And you know what even made it worse, and I must touch on it, what made it worse for me on the weekend was looking over at Gareth Ainsworth, obviously the gaffer for QPR, in what could only be described as a Led Zeppelin look, with at least, I think, I was counting the buttons that were done up on Gareth Ainsworth's shirt, and it was 2 at any maximum time. The man was showing that much chest with this gold chain around his neck and his long flowing locks, and it was just frustrating me even more that Gareth Ainsworth was sitting there with his long flowing locks looking glorious, his chest out, and he's, in the sun, and I implore you, Gareth, you're a good-looking man, but please do more buttons up on your shirt on match day, because it was distracting. Okay,
that was the key to their success. Then distracting the Borough players.
Born in Sunderland as well. Born in Sunderland, Gareth Ainsworth.
Yeah, there you go.
Was he really?
I didn't know that.
I'm sure he was, yeah.
We'll have a dig and we'll find out, but could well be right. Carlin Yarm, North Yorkshire, has been in touch. He said, look, Boro's got too much talent to remain bottom, so he's got no concerns. But he did say at the start of the season, the squad is not good enough to reach the playoffs this year. So that was that's Carlin Yarm. Peter in Horden. I'd just like to rub it in to Steve by saying 5-0. There you go. And we've had Adam from the Shipyard Cat, which is available on podcast and also on the Cat across Wearside, Sunderland and Wearside, on the Cat. He says 5-star performance, leaving Ross Stewart thinking, what have I joined this team for? They can't beat Sunderland. Equus Rocket Boots scoring for fun. To hear about the Boro getting beat, it's a shame, with huge tears coming straight after shame. Followed by the Mags getting beat. To quote the song, oh, what a feeling, with lots of smiley tears coming after the word feeling. All in all, a great weekend for being a Sunderland fan. So I think that's a prime WhatsApp on 0330 043 2002 to hand over to Macca for the remaining hour.
Absolutely, there's the winner there for them 2 tickets.
He's nominated.
Not that I'm biased, like, but that's what a weekend to be a Sunderland fan. And just like you say, I'm hoping, we can just keep it going. But after the international break, I think we've got QPR, Blackburn and Cardiff, I think, and Sheffield Wednesday before the month of September's out. So fair play to the lads, because you've got to admit, guys, there was a lot of pressure on Sunderland going into this game as well.
Oh, yeah.
With regards to, obviously, the transfer window, the way we are in the league at the moment as well. And but at the same time, it was sort of a free hit because no one was expecting us to do anything against Southampton. But no, fair play to them. They came out and they performed, and the atmosphere was brilliant on Saturday as well. The crowd, to a man, woman and child, got behind Sunderland from the first minute to the last. And I don't think anyone left the game early. Definitely not.
And leaving the game early, that was what we're going to talk about, wasn't it? I mean, Arsenal fans all over Twitter leaving the game early yesterday, especially when it looked as if Manchester United had nicked it, and then VAR stepped in and did its usual 10-minute review. So of course Arsenal fans thought, well, I'll get the bus home early, I'll get the tube.
Burn it at the stake.
They'd left early, and of course the goal was chalked off, and then they missed Declan Rice and Gabriel Jesus getting 2 goals to give Arsenal an infamous victory, and they were already at home. I mean, have you ever left a match early, Dave? I mean, I've got to be honest, I've done it once, and it was Newcastle United away to Blackburn. We were 3-0 down under Sam Allardyce, and I didn't leave early. I went downstairs and I used the facilities, and I drank a copious amount of lager, and I can't remember getting home, lads. That was the closest I came to actually physically leaving early.
I left the Riverside at the weekend 1 minute before the full-time whistle, so I was about 5 minutes into time added on before, and that was just to get a head start to walk back to the car and get out, because leaving once the cars start rolling, leaving the Riverside's difficult. But no, I mean, if you're talking about leaving early,
it's not that big of a crowd, Dave. Surely.
Oh, I was waiting for it. I did tee it up, and Macca smashed it away. Good man. But I don't understand fans who leave ridiculously early. I've seen fans. I've been at games when fans have disappeared 20 minutes before the end, and the Boro's actually come back and scored a couple of goals. It's exactly. and I laugh, I snigger in their general direction for doing that. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't
I've
do
left
it.
early once, an away game at Bristol City. I wasn't very well. I think I had like 3 or 4 matches that week or something, and I had like a cold and a sore throat and that, and we was 3-0 down after half an hour. So I said to my pal, I know we're not far from the bus, because where the bus was parked at Bristol City is quite a short walk. He's like, well, I can go and put you on there if you want. You can just sit and listen to it on your radio. I was like, well, yeah, because I'm not well. We're getting beat 3-0. So I went back to the bus. Sunderland came back and drew 3-3.
Can I tell you a story about the Champions League final? One of the jobs I had was I was a TV presenter for ESPN in the US, and they sent me over to Istanbul for the 2005 Liverpool-Milan final. And Liverpool were 3-0 down at half-time. We were down in the press room. I was with a guy called Janusz Mihalik, who was a former USA national team player. He was a fullback, and he was my summariser, if you like. And Janusz said, look at all this food, look at all this drink, 3-0 down, games on the screens, shall we stay down here for the second half? I went, Janusz, it's the Champions League final, mate. Let's go back up. Oh, I know, but and begrudgingly he came back up, and obviously Gerrard et al. 3-3 into penalties, winning it on penalties. I am so pleased temptation did not make me decide to have sandwiches and lots of drink in the press room. So that was, that could have been a form of leaving early had we not gone back into the stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's incredible to see. Obviously, we've got the picture here of the Arsenal fans walking out, and obviously them turning it around. But,
and running back.
And running back, as they're locking down at their phones. I mean, I guess we had the rail strikes and that, and there might have been a bit of that. But I've got to ask as well, Dave, there was a fire outside the Riverside Stadium towards the end of the game as well.
Yeah.
As we saw, not only is Boro's season on fire, there was an actual fire just outside the Riverside Stadium and smoke bellowing over the Riverside Stadium. So there was a bit of something going on outside the Riverside Stadium. There was jokes that it's our season, and one of the shots that we'd had hit something, because we can't hit a barn door, so we can kick it outside of the stadium and stuff.
Did you have a shot?
Yeah, there was a bit of a fire.
Yeah, we had a few shots, Macca. We had a few shots. I didn't see that actually. When I left the Riverside, looking back, there was you could see the smoke billowing from the nearby industrial estate. So nothing more than an industrial unit that was on fire. I'm sure that's important to the owner, of course. But the comments about QPR being on fire at the Riverside, very quickly came out. But,
well, let's hope they're not after the international break when we play them down in London.
Yeah, I'm telling you, mate, I now feel confident for the Black Cats down at QPR at Loftus Road.
Yeah.
So that's probably the kiss of death.
Oh,
and Ainsworth is a Blackburn lad, by the way, lads. We were talking about him earlier. He's a Blackburn lad, born in Blackburn. So Ainsworth is a Blackburn lad.
Hey up. Ecky thump. Lancashire. We had a being a good Yorkshireman, I can't accept Lancashire. We had a battle with them once over the colour of the rose. I'm telling you, that's a bit of local history in England. Sorry about that, right? Comment coming in. We did ask the question about get your comments in. One's coming on social, and it's from. Hang on, I'm reaching over. It's Chris Hoggart. He's a Boro fan. He's answering the question about when will Boro's season turn round. He's confident it'll be sooner rather than later. So I just wanted to get that one. Yeah.
Look, I'm
slightly. Who you got after the international break?
We got Blackburn. Yeah, we got Blackburn. So we go to Blackburn straight after the international break. So. Look, I believe in Carrick. I believe in this club that we're not going to stay bottom. We've got too many good players on that pitch to and in that squad to stay where we're at. I trust in Carrick to get it right. I think he's a great man management gaffer, if you will. I think he's the best thing, and I've always said it about Carrick is he's always worked on gelling a squad together and making sure that mentally and I guess socially that they're a together unit. And I think obviously we've seen a lot of change, probably more than we've seen in a few years, other than like the Gary Monk era, which we won't touch on. But
no, don't go there.
12 players, 12 players in, we lost, all those loan signings. We were trying to learn from that, and in what would be something as a Boro fan, and probably future Boro fans will talk about is remember that time we had all those loan signings and we've never loaned anyone ever since, sort of thing. So it's interesting to see. And one thing I will ask about Carrick is I do trust him, but it's the recruitment for me that drives more questions with Kieran Scott as our head of recruitment. When Michael Carrick was signed, the first interview said you've been at Man United, you've got a great dossier there of contacts throughout the league. Will you dip into that? And Carrick said, of course. The best thing is that I've been at Man United. for so long. I've been at many different clubs, spoken to many different managers. I've got a dossier there. I will definitely be dipping into Man United to get some of the youngsters, and I've got some names in my head already that can come up to Boro and would fit in really well into the system. Since that comment on day one of Carrick signing on Middlesbrough, we have not seen one singular Man United player come in to the club, or one player that seemed to be the Carrick type of player. So I want to ask, are the days of a gaffer signing a player completely over? Is it now down to head of recruitment and you're just given what you got and you have to get on with it? Because it doesn't seem like any one of those players, I know he's the head coach, I know he's obviously going to have to have some say, but there doesn't seem to be one player in there that seemed to be the Michael Carrick signing. And maybe that's just me, being naive to that. The new fact is that the head of recruitment for each club this day and age does the recruitment, and the gaffer is the head coach. He doesn't have the say on the signings, and he just has to, get the players performing on the pitch.
It's a good point, that, because I've asked this about Newcastle in the past. I mean, some people say that Dan Ashworth has a lot of control and a lot of power over the players coming in. Does Eddie Howe have much of a say? You listen to the interviews, you would imagine he does. You would imagine those two work in tandem. Dan Ashworth's the head of recruitment. He sends the scouts out. They go and look. They present a list of players that they've looked at, and like a dossier. Eddie Howe, though, I would imagine writes a list out and hands it over. We've seen on We Are Newcastle United, the Amazon documentary, we've seen a little insight into how a transfer deal is done. We saw the Anthony Gordon one with Amanda Staveley on the phone playing hardball over the fee. We saw Dan Ashworth on a couple of occasions in the programme as well, taking the players round when players arrive, and they certainly seem to have a chain of command, if you like. But it is an interesting question. I mean, I've often thought this, and it's the second time we've talked about Manchester United on this programme today, but I've often looked at the the players that Manchester United have brought in with the variety of managers they've had, and they've had some great managers, Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, and now Ten Hag. But some of these, since the days of Alex Ferguson, you got the impression that Alex Ferguson had a hands-on with the recruitment, and he had a hands-on with the youth, the class of 92 that he brought through. But with these managers now, it looks as if it's just a case of, right, the Glazers are going out and they're saying, right, we want Ronaldo, there he is, plunk him in the dressing room and see what happens. We want, and that's the point you're making, right? I think you're 100% right, and that can be at a whole host of clubs, and it certainly sounds like that could be maybe an issue at Middlesbrough. I don't know.
Well, I think and for me, if we turn around now and say, righto, Carrick's been given this squad by Kieran Scott, the recruitment staff, and Michael Carrick isn't getting the best out of this squad, then do we go and then blame Carrick, and Carrick is the one to get the sack? Or can we turn around and say, listen, the recruitment hasn't been the best. You've gone out and signed 12 players, and can we then, if it's not on the gaffer then to bring the players in the club, is it then on a point where we can go, well, hang on, Kieran Scott, head of recruitment, you've gotten it wrong. Carrick's been unjustly done. Is it then, can we look at Kieran Scott if they because then we used to fire managers and gaffers because, one, they weren't performing on the pitch, they weren't getting the signings right, and obviously managers come and go. We know that it's football, we see them, change sometimes, if you look at Watford and stuff like that example, they change managers more than I change my underwear, do you know what I mean? So it's a thing where if you have a head of recruitment, obviously they can oversee a long-term picture for multiple managers, but there has to now be some sort of answering and questioning onto that recruitment if the recruitment isn't done correctly, because the manager can only do so much with what he's given, I guess. So ultimately falls on Carrick's head. I completely agree, but I think Carrick will get it right. But if these players that he has been given fail to perform or fail to live up to expectations, then questions need to be asked of the recruitment, and obviously the players that they've deemed and why we had and questions are always going to be asked why we couldn't just pay Chuba what he was worth. But, if that's the story, and I'd love to sit down with Chuba one day, but if Chuba literally was just saying, look, pay me this and I'm staying for Middlesbrough, for life, or was he always going to go and Middlesbrough just couldn't afford it? Because you don't know any of that. But it seems to me that we've gone out and signed 12 players. We've signed Latte Lath on a big wage by the looks of it. Why couldn't we have just fronted up and gone, Chuba Akpom, here's what you're worth, and the recruitment from that side of things, because you just don't know. But it beggars belief now that if a recruitment has such a say on the game, on the market, on the team sheet that's put out there, then they have questions to answer for when it's not working as well.
It's an interesting one that the three legends picked up on a couple of weeks ago, because let's not forget Lee Clark and Craig Hignett have managed football clubs, and the pair of them were in full agreement that they would struggle in this day and age, modern system of having a head of recruitment, because their points were, and it was Lee Clark more than Craig Hignett was saying, I am judged by my results on the pitch every Saturday or whenever we play, and if these aren't my players that I feel are the best players for my system, the way I play, for the existing team, it's me who ultimately will carry the can. So he would be very uncomfortable. The pair of them said they would be very uncomfortable if they did not have huge influence in the players that the club signs. So that's an interesting one, and it's a big shift in the way the game's gone in the last 5 years.
Massive shift. And it's obviously they're spending big money. We see Tonali at Newcastle. And would you argue, Steve, that Tonali was an Eddie Howe signing, or was it a recruitment signing at Newcastle?
That's a good question. I mean, listening to the interviews that Eddie Howe's given, he seems to be a Tonali fan. He seems to have looked at him and watched him, but it's open to conjecture, isn't it? I mean, these people are always going to sing from the same hymn sheet, unless there's an argument or unless there's a fallout between each other, and then you start to realise, oh, hold on a minute, that isn't exactly what it seemed. But at the moment, I would say Tonali was probably an Eddie Howe player. But it's a fascinating dynamic to modern day football, because in the good old days, back in the 70s and 80s, it was a football manager, and now the modern day is now head coach. I mean, going back to Steve Bruce, he was a head coach, and he wasn't a manager.
Changed, hasn't it?
The whole thing's changed, lads. The whole thing's changed.
What do you think, lads, of the head of recruitment role? I mean, do you think the manager should be given all the power, or do you think managers are sort of hard done by when it comes to the head of recruitment? Because, like you say, they carry the can for the results, the manager. So, and ultimately, it's normally the manager that loses the job, not the head of recruitment. So, what do you actually think is the role?
Well, they're going to get paid more, aren't they? Managers are going to get paid more. I think. I mean, correct us if I'm wrong. And I think, getting back to Steve Bruce, I think he used to go in. The reason he was such he's appealing to a lot of clubs is that he would always go in on a lower rate of wage, but his severance pay, I think, always made up for that. But I think the certain managers go in with the idea of, I've got no real interest in turning it around. This is an earner for me, because it's the only job where you get paid for being a failure. I think head of recruitment, I think they've got it easy, but they won't be getting the same kind of big bucks as the manager. So they can more or less sit in the background, and as you say, they're not in the spotlight. But managers get well paid, so I've got no sympathy for a manager who gets sacked. I mean,
but
Sam
Allardyce. The thing is, Steve, though, the head of recruitment, they can be ultimately responsible for the manager sacking, because they might bring, like you say, they might bring in players that the manager doesn't want, And I just
and we saw that at Sunderland, didn't we, Macca? You know what I mean? We saw that at Sunderland on Friday, and leading up to the week, because Mogga's saying, give me a striker. Not once did he, and obviously he can't because it's not his player and stuff, but not once did he say, yeah, look, I've got my target, I know who I want as a striker. It was never, I have identified a striker and this is who I want the club to go for, and even alluding to that, it was literally the saying, get me a striker. Then he put the emphasis on the recruitment staff on Sunderland to then go and find a striker. So at the end of the day, they've gone, right, Mogga, we've gotten you two strikers, get the best out of them. And whether Mogga, of course they would go, Mogga, this is who we're thinking, did you want to sign off on that? And I guess that's what happens. But, it's interesting to see when, managers these days, when they're listed as head coaches, that, they say, okay, I want a striker, I want a CDM, I want a centre back, go and do it. And then the recruitment staff, because you base a manager on their experience, right? On their history, on their record, their win-loss ratio, all that sort of stuff. What do we base the recruitment staff on? Do we look at their previous? Okay, we got Kieran Scott from Norwich. Is Norwich, done so well in recruitment that Kieran Scott has now got a pedigree to go based on that's your resume? Like, because there's no sort of, win-loss. Recruitment staff don't go on, oh, well, he was the recruitment staff at Newcastle and he was, behind bringing in Tonali, so we'll get him down to Middlesbrough, who don't have that amount of money, and he's not going to be able to sign a Tonali. And it beggars belief how their resume is structured and how they become the best recruitment staff in the country.
It's going to be an interesting thing to see if Sunderland's run continues. On Friday, just before the deadline window slammed shut, Sunderland fans were wondering what the hell was going on at the Stadium of Light. Then on Saturday, they do Southampton by 5-0. Macca, if this run continues, who gets the credit, or who should get the credit? Christian Speakman, head of recruitment, or Tony Mowbray?
I would probably say Speakman. Or both really, but Speakman mostly because he's brought the players in, hasn't he? I'd love to know how much, say, Tony Mowbray, for example, is getting in the players that that Speakman have brought in.
I think he got into them before the Southampton game because they came out, they were on fire. There was no smoke on the horizon like outside the Riverside at the weekend, but they were on fire. They were right in Southampton's faces and scored within 45 seconds.
50 odd. Yeah, it was brilliant. Oh, honestly, it puts a big smile on my face every time you mention it, Dave.
I'll stop mentioning it then. I'll stop mentioning it.
Let's just remind, just in case you went away, out of the big three in the northeast, Sunderland were the only ones that won at the weekend. So.
Oh, there we go. Enjoy it while you can.
See, I would argue that it's some credit has to be given to Mogga because he's given the players to work with, and it's up to him to get the best out of them. So if we are going down the path where the recruitment staff are just giving you the players, then Mogga deserves the credit because one, obviously, yes, you've identified a good target, but it's up to Mogga to get that player to perform. It's up for that Mogga to get, to stop the player getting on social media and saying, I don't like him and stuff like that. So for me, once the player's in the club, it's directly on the manager or the head coach then to then take care of that player and get the best out of him.
Absolutely, and I think obviously the way that Sunderland lost them players like Gooch and Ross Stewart and that, we could have been on a downer, like as in the team, they could have been on a downer, could have maybe folded and thought, oh, well, we've lost some of our good players, we're not going to beat Southampton, these spend loads of millions of pounds considering what we spend, and ex-Premier League team, and they're meant to go straight back up. Fair play, honestly, fair play to the team, because they didn't think like that, and they came out, and like you say, like someone said earlier, I think it was Adam on a WhatsApp message, 5-star performance, clean sheet, 4 different goal scorers. Oh, it's what a time to be a red and white.
It's still time to get your comments in to the Northeast Footy Breakfast. You can via WhatsApp. Just send us a WhatsApp text. Is that what it's called? A WhatsApp message to 0330 043 2002. That's 0330 043 2002. And don't forget, we still have those 2 VIP tickets to go and see Kevin Keegan and Peter Reid this coming Thursday at South Shields Football Club. And they are VIP meet and greet tickets. So if you're a Sunderland fan, you can get to shake Peter Reid's hand and turn your back on Kevin Keegan. If you're a Newcastle fan, you can get to shake KK's hand, kiss him on the hand like the deity that he is to NUFC fans, and turn your back on Peter Reid. So I mean,
and if you both, you can turn your back on Dave. He'll be there as well.
Yeah, I'll be there. You can just spit in my face. That's not a problem. A couple of comments that are coming in. Borough fans in the main. Mark Wetter. It's a very long message he sent in, but he's basically said, look, I don't want to be responsible for starting a bad rumour, but I genuinely feel if we now go another 5 games without a win, then Carrick will go. And then he goes on to point out it's all about having a strong defence. You've got to have a strong defence. Yeah. So you're starting and giving yourself a chance in a game and not having to chase it. So that's from Mark Wetter. Couple of comments flying in, actually. John Rowe has said there's more chance of Boro turning the season round. There's more chance of raising the Titanic than Boro turning the season round, the way that we're playing. So, thank you for that one, mate. Thank you for that one. Oh, what have we got, fellas? We've got 13 minutes left.
Mo Salah. Is he going to go, lads?
Now there's
Salah.
an interesting.
Will he, won't he?
Were they
Will
goodbye
he, won't
tears as he was coming off the pitch? Who knows? What are your thoughts, Steve?
I agree with Steve, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is just going to be the biggest bid in football, isn't it, this week? I mean, it's a big talking point. I think I've spoken to a lot of fans from different clubs, north, south, east and west over the weekend, and people are just waiting for Klopp's tears, I think, which will be very salty if the Saudi come in with a bid. Which I've heard rumours, 175 million and 200 million, and of course wages of 1.5 million a week, which is obscene. Completely obscene. But yeah, I don't think the Saudis are going to stop. And of course, the big bone of contention for Jurgen Klopp is that this transfer window is open a week later than ours, and that it's going to leave Liverpool have made some great signings with the midfield players, but they're going to be left woefully short up front if Salah goes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
Right?
And I think the big conjecture is literally how the Saudi Arabian window is open 1 week later, and whether that's been done deliberately, who knows? But if you're a Liverpool, CEO, if you're a Liverpool, fan, obviously you don't want Salah to go. But I beg a belief that anyone at that club can say no to 200 million for a 31-year-old in Salah. Obviously, he's a club legend. He's a club favourite. You'll be devastated to lose him. And I don't know who can replace a Salah. I don't know if you can replace a Salah, but to cash in on a 31-year-old Salah for 20 mil, which could change your club. You look at maybe some of the signings and they can go and get in January, potentially, when it might be too late then. But it's going to anger Klopp. It will anger Klopp. God, he'll be furious after that. We saw him obviously after the Newcastle win that, he was, on what his thoughts on the Saudi Arabia market was. But to me, that Salah reaction was that one of goodbye.
Those pearly white teeth will be ground down.
There will be. Macca, what's your thoughts?
So devastated, won't he?
I know Steve hasn't, but I've got a soft spot for Klopp. I like him because, he's good for a line, isn't he? I mean, he says it as it is. Whether there's a TV camera in front of him, whether it's on the sideline getting himself into trouble with the match officials. I like that from him. So it'll be, I'm not saying it'll be good to see genuine tears coming out, but I fully expect him to be tearing up in a press conference when he talks about how good Salah was and disappointed he was to lose him.
Do you guys think that Salah is the best player in the world to warrant 200 million?
No, but I can see why they would want to pay it.
Steve, do you reckon Salah's worth 200 mil?
No, definitely not, mate. I mean, Liverpool should snap their hands off because of the fact that he's going to be free next year to go. I can't see how the owners of Liverpool won't take an improved offer. But he's definitely not worth that, and he's not worth those wages. That really is an obscene amount of money. But the bottom line is that Mo Salah going to Saudi is something that they want to they want him to be the poster boy of the Saudi league, and I think it'll happen whether Liverpool like it or not, but no, definitely not worth that money, mate.
I don't think there's any player currently who's worth 200
that much
million.
no,
absolutely
I can't beg a belief. I mean, who would you say the best player in the world is right now? Maybe Mbappe, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't say Mbappe, for a 200 mil. Haaland as well.
Yeah, the goals
we saw even Bellingham, going off to Real Madrid didn't warrant a wage that Salah's now being.
I thought you were talking about Job, who went to the stadium alive.
I thought about Job.
The Job, exactly. He's older brother. He's 250 mil. If anyone wants to talk, I obviously, Boro fans are blaming me for the Sammy Silvera transfer. If anyone wants to talk about Riley McGree, 250 mil, you got me. Call me whenever you want.
I'll tell you another funny story, fellas. I feel like an old granddad here with all these stories I keep telling. But then again, I'm old enough. You're talking about 200 mil now. We're expecting a deal for Salah for 200 mil. I remember presenting a TV show down in London, and Rodney Marsh was the daily guest. It was Talk TV was the channel. Didn't last long, obviously, because I was involved. But I was sitting there, and we were talking transfers because big money was starting to be bandied about. And Rodney Marsh turned round and he said to me, "Dave, mark my words, we will see in the next 10 years somebody paying £50 million for a footballer. Mark my words. And now I'm thinking we're talking 200 million for a player.
Yeah.
I mean, 200 million, whether it's dollars, well, I won't say yen, dollars or euros or pounds, could pay for a football club 3 times over. And we're talking one player.
We talk about financial crisis and the cost of living and everything that, the normal punters going up, and you got Saudi Arabia and that throwing around that type of money for a footballer, to play on the pitch for what? For how long has Salah got left in his career at 31 years of age? The average footballer retires 33? It's incredible.
You can't blame the player though, can you, Steve? If somebody offers you 200 million, you're going to take it, aren't you? Sorry. If somebody's going to offer you, what was it? Salah's on £360,000 a week at Liverpool. He's being offered £360,000 a day if he goes to Saudi. You're not going to turn that down, are you?
No, I mean, look, you're looking at financial security for the rest of your life. I'm sure Mo Salah's all right anyway. But I mean, I guess there's a couple of things which it comes down to. It's what are your ambitions? Well, Mo Salah's won everything in football, hasn't he? He's won the Champions League. He's won the Premier League now. He's won the cups. So there isn't really that to think about. Is it a personal ambition? You'd want to win the Ballon d'Or maybe as a player. Yeah. That's the ultimate prize in football. But other than that, he's got nothing more to achieve. So you would imagine that he's going to go. But if it was somebody else, if it was Bellingham, if he'd had the opportunity to go to the Saudi League, I think he's more ambitious. He wouldn't want to do that. But it's simply down to money. I think the other thing is as well, it's his faith, isn't it? I mean, Salah is a Muslim, and he is. This is a Muslim country. This is what I'm saying about being the poster boy of the Saudi League. It would be a big honour for him to go there, and I think he would feel the same way. So there's that as well. We also have to look at it from the human rights issue. There will be people who might get an offer of going to play in the Saudi League, but won't for a conflict in how they feel about Saudi as a country at this moment in time. So there's lots of things to take into consideration, but Salah certainly won't be going through any of those issues, I wouldn't have thought. I think he wants to go. I think the tears were tears of goodbye. The fact that he scored in his final game as well in front of the home crowd in a Liverpool win, I think it was the perfect way for him to go. He's got nothing else to prove, nothing else to achieve, and I think Mo Salah will be in Saudi this time next week.
I couldn't agree more. I think obviously for that amount of wage, and obviously being the poster boy of the Saudi Arabian League, that amount of money, it's a done deal for me. And I would think Liverpool. I think look, as a Liverpool fan, you'd hate to see it, but the money that you would get for him, and how that could set Liverpool up for the future. As angry and upset you would be, I think at some point there's got to be some level of, if you were in Salah's boots, what would you do? And I think, 9 times out of 10, you'd take that money.
Fellas, we're out of time. We've done it. We haven't even moved on to England.
Yeah, I know. We've got a big week, don't we? International break. We've got to fill in the gaps. So we've got a big week coming. I think it's, we got international break, but we're going to try and move away from the results on the weekend and focus on international. We've got the Socceroos. They're the Australian lads from Middlesbrough. They're travelling off to Texas. We're going to talk about that. I think we've got a big week of Northeast Breakfast Radio.
I think you've got absolutely no chance. We'll move away from the weekend's games while Macca's around.
No, exactly. More importantly, who won the tickets? That's the big question.
Go on. I could tell your glee will give it to Adam from the Shipyard Cat for his 5-star performance.
Congrats, Adam.
Tears of laughter over Boro and Newcastle. He's absolutely living the high life as a Sunderland fan this week. Yep. Yeah. And for the next 10 days. Yeah, indeed.
Brilliant.
Fellas, same time, same place tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Black Cats, top of the north.
Oh, there
Take
we
care,
go.
Lads.
Cheers.
Steve and Rye, the Northeast Footy Breakfast.
The Cats with Toon and